Lennox is actually questioning this idea that Malcolm killed Duncan. Hello and welcome back to Nibble Pop. Today we will be looking at scene 6 of Act 3 of Macbeth. We are doing a thorough textual reading of Macbeth, and if you haven't watched the previous videos, I would strongly recommend you to do them. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do that right now. This scene is going to be an extremely short one, and we will find out a little bit about what is happening in Scotland and how people are reacting to Macbeth in this scene. Stay with me till the end of this video, and without wasting any more time, let's jump to the scene. Before starting the scene, I want you to know a term, chorus. Now, in Greek tragedies, chorus was an important part of the play. Usually, chorus was a group of people consisting of common people, common man or woman, who used to stand at the side of the stage and would comment on the things happening on stage, the main events of the stage. And they used to give not just an idea about the events going on stage, but also pass some kind of moral judgment. So the chorus represented the moral stand of society in some way. Interestingly, Shakespeare does not use chorus as an important element in his plays. He does away with this feature. Instead, we have secondary characters who come on stage at times and comment on the events happening in the life of the main characters. So they serve some kind of choric purpose. So these are choric characters. And this scene, the 6th scene, is more like a choric narrative, you can say. Now, why Shakespeare does not use a full-fledged chorus is because first it was something that belonged to a bygone generation, and second is perhaps he never wanted to have any official moral stand. Shakespeare was a man who had faith in his audience and wanted them to look at characters and incidents using their own moral perspectives. He never imposes on the audience's sense of justice or sense of decorum or even sense of morality. So this liberal attitude of Shakespeare is reflected in the fact that he does not have a formal chorus in his play. These characters, which come in regular intervals, commenting on the events of the play, they provide some sort of contemporary moral stand and help us have an idea about the social milieu in which the characters, the main characters, they lived. Lennox and another lord, they enter, and in some of the editions and even the edition followed by Dr. Johnson, this other lord was Ross, but in most of the editions this other lord is anonymous, and being anonymous makes this man more like a representative of the common man or the common lord in that sense. Let's look at what Lennox has to say. My former speeches have but hit your thoughts, which can interpret further. So I spoke with you earlier and I could not say much, but you have understood what I've tried to say. So from this line we understand that even when two people are talking in private, they are trying to mince their words. They are trying to restrict their words. They don't want to speak openly. So this is an air of suspicion that we are looking at. Only, I say, things have been strangely born. So he is quite suspicious of how things have turned out. Duncan dead, Banquo dead, and he says that the gracious Duncan was pitied of Macbeth. Marry, he was dead. So Duncan was quite close to Macbeth. He is no more. And the right valiant Banquo walked too late. So Banquo, he also met the same fate, and he walked too late. So it's not safe to be outside anymore. Whom you may say, if it please you, Fleance killed, for Fleance fled. Now, people were given this idea that Malcolm and Donalbain had fled the country after Duncan's death. Therefore, Malcolm or Donalbain, they were responsible for Duncan's death. This was the general idea propagated by Macbeth. Following the same logic, because Fleance also fled after Banquo's death, it must be understood that Fleance killed Banquo, because Malcolm Donalbain killed Duncan. Now, this is interesting because Fleance is such a young child that nobody would believe that Fleance could kill his father, and therefore Lennox is actually questioning this idea that Malcolm killed Duncan. This means that he is totally suspicious of Macbeth. Men must not walk too late, who cannot want the thought how monstrous it was for Malcolm and for Donalbain to kill the gracious father. So Malcolm and Donalbain, they killed their father. That's too monstrous. Damned fact. How it did grieve Macbeth. Macbeth was so full of sorrow. So all these statements that Lennox is making, this clearly has an air of satire, you can say. He's not meaning what he's saying. He is certainly extremely suspicious of Macbeth. He knows that Macbeth was only showing grief. It was not real grief. Did he not straight in pious rage, in holy anger, the two delinquents tear that were the slaves of drink and thralls of sleep? The delinquents means the criminals. They had killed Duncan because they were drunk, and Macbeth killed them because of anger. This was the story that Macbeth told everyone. Was not that nobly done? That was quite heroic to kill those two criminals. Aye, and wisely too, for it would have angered any heart alive. Now this is very important what he is saying here. It would have angered any heart alive to hear the men deny it. So Lennox knows that these men had not killed Duncan, and when they would have come to their senses, they would have denied, and that would have been a problem for Macbeth. So it was wise on Macbeth's part to kill those criminals. So that I say he has borne all things well. Everything has gone pretty well for Macbeth. And I do think that had he Duncan's sons under his key, under his control, as and it please heaven he shall not. So from these words in the parenthesis, words in the brackets, we understand that Lennox really wants Malcolm and Donalbain safe and away from Macbeth. They should find what it were to kill a father, which means that if Malcolm and Donalbain were under Macbeth's power, Macbeth would kill them as well. Okay, so of course to suit his purpose. But see, the way he is speaking, nobody can accuse him of speaking against the king. But we know what he means. So should Fleance, but peace. For from broad words and cause he failed his presence at the tyrant's feast, I hear. Macduff lives in disgrace. Lennox is worried about Macduff because Macduff had not attended Macbeth's bidding. Macbeth had ordered Macduff to come. Macduff had refused. Sir, can you tell where he bestows himself? Do you know where Macduff is right now? And this other lord, he knows the answer. The son of Duncan, from whom this tyrant holds the due of birth. Now this word tyrant was first used by Linux. Tyrant is not a positive word. Tyrant is a ruler who has no regard for his subjects, who is self-centered, selfish, and is an autocratic ruler. So by using this word tyrant to mean Macbeth, these two people, they show their point of view in a strong way. They show that they are thinking against Macbeth and not supporting him. And in using that particular word, a bond is created between these two people that, okay, I'm also on your side. So you can safely speak to me. I will not go against you, betray you, and tell everything to Macbeth. So this air of suspicion that goes around in a nation breaks the nation from inside. And that is what is happening to Scotland right now. The son of Duncan, from whom this tyrant holds the due of birth, the birthright. Malcolm's birthright is his kingship. Macbeth is denying him that. Lives in the English court. So Malcolm has gone to take shelter in England and is received of the most pious Edward with such grace. And the King of England has promised to help Malcolm in a graceful way, that the malevolence of fortune nothing takes from his high respect. Thither Macduff is gone to pray the holy king. So the malevolence means the enmity. Enmity of fortune means Malcolm and of course his brother too, they have been through a very bad patch in life. And now this English king is providing them with a kind of security. Okay. So benevolence is the word which is set against malevolence. And benevolence is what Edward represents here. Goodness. Thither Macduff is gone to pray the holy king. So note these words: holy king, pious Edward, grace. All these words show that the English king is presented in a very, very positive, almost angelic light, and we can understand why Shakespeare is deliberately doing it. He has to please the English queen also, and somehow he has to present the English king as the epitome of virtue and grace. Okay, so Edward is that. Macduff has gone to this king upon his aid to wake Northumberland and warlike Seward. So Macduff wants an alliance of Northumbria. Northumbria is the northern part of England. If you have seen the map of old England, you would see that Northumbria was the part which was close to Scotland. So the King of England, together with the powers of Northumbria, they would collectively attack Scotland, attack Macbeth's castle. That by the help of these, with him above to ratify the work, to sanction the work, so the king will be sanctioning this work, this attack, we may again. And what will happen if this attack is carried out? What will happen if Macbeth is defeated? Give to our tables meat, sleep to our nights, free from our feasts and banquets bloody knives. So our feasts, our banquets are spoiled by disgraceful murders. We want to free ourselves from this tyranny. So these people are tired of Macbeth's lunacy. These people are tired of Macbeth's cruelty. Do faithful homage and receive free honors, all which we pine for now. Pine means we desire. So we want to be happy and full of peace and comfort. We're sick and tired of this tyrant. And it's natural, because who was the King of Scotland before Macbeth? Duncan. And what kind of ruler Duncan was? He was a graceful ruler and people loved him. So they would naturally be against Macbeth. And we have seen how Macbeth is behaving. He is behaving in an unpredictable, almost psychotic manner. People can't have faith in him. And this report hath so exasperated the king. The king here means Macbeth. Macbeth has come to know about these things, that the King of England has gone against him, that he prepares for some attempt of war, that Macbeth himself is getting ready for war. Sent he to Macduff? So has Macbeth sent for Macduff? He did, and with an absolute, "Sir, not I," the cloudy messenger turns me his back and hums as who would say. So Macduff refused to come and meet Macbeth, and he said, "Sir, not I." And the person who went to invite Macduff or pass the message to Macduff from Macbeth is referred to as the cloudy messenger. Cloudy means gloomy, sullen, in this case because he's carrying bad news. So this messenger, he said to Macduff, "You will rue the time that clogs me with this answer. You will regret." Rue means regret. You will regret that the fact that you have answered me in the negative. You should have gone and met Macbeth. So this was a kind of a subtle threat that Macduff received from Macbeth, and that well might advise him to a caution. And because he received such a threat, Macduff should be cautious now. It would hold what distance his wisdom can provide. Some holy angel fly to the court of England and unfold his message before he come. So he is now wishing, Lennox is wishing that some holy angel, here angel is used in the same way that it was used in Old English in the sense of a messenger. So he wants some holy messenger to reach England and unfold his message before he come, that a swift blessing may soon return to this our suffering country under a hand accursed. So he is calling the hand of Macbeth a cursed hand. This rule, a cursed rule. And he wants the prompt interference of foreign forces here, of English forces here. And of course they feel that Macduff will be quick enough to go and seek the help of the King of England. I'll send my prayers with him. So this scene, which again I told you it's a choric narrative rather, this gives you an idea about what was going on in Scotland and how people were getting prepared for an impending war. This was not just a civil war, although it looks like one because the lords were going against the king, so it was kind of a civil war, but it was more than that. Because you see, in a civil war, usually the revolution is against a supposedly rightful ruler. Here, Macbeth's right to the throne is also questioned. People have complete faith that Malcolm is the rightful heir to the throne, and therefore they feel that what Macbeth is doing is going against nature and is a tyrant. This scene also provides a sort of dramatic relief, not a comic relief, don't get confused. It's a dramatic relief, you can say, because now the next act is going to start where we will see the way in which Macbeth topples down completely. So this provides a kind of a last break before the emotions rise again. And Shakespeare is deliberately creating a gap where you don't see Macbeth on stage for a certain period of time, so that when he re-arrives on stage, you're all attention. Thank you for being with me. Usually you don't have reference to context questions from this scene, but who knows, some paper setters might trick you, especially because they want to know if you have studied the text thoroughly or not. I hope if you have watched this video, you can manage to write answers on any questions related to this scene. If you have any comments, any suggestions, please write them and I'll get back to you. And don't miss the next episode where we will be beginning the 4th act with a very, very important scene. So long then, all of you stay very safe. This is Monami Mukherjee. You were watching Nimble Pop. Bye bye.